there's a lot of people who are going to be thinking to themselves like, gosh, does this specialization thing actually work?
I've done everything from digital layout websites to print to a little bit of animation, flash adverts back in the day, email newsletters. Like, I can do it all. But by focusing on the logo design things, and then wrote a couple of landing pages just targeting the keywords freelance logo designer London, and within the space of something like 2 months, I was number one. The more the following increases, the more I can start to charge for this.
What is the most you've ever been paid for? Let's set the bar. It's like, prices start at.
These days, when people go through my website, there's a form there that says, what is your current budget?
What are the ranges they can choose from?
1,000 to 5,000, 5 to 10, and 10,000 plus. And obviously everybody selects 0 to 1.
James, before we go any further, for people who don't know who you are, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of your backstory?
Do you want the long version or the short version? Because I listened to your podcast with Yasmin about the LinkedIn guy, and I've got my LinkedIn headline ready for this episode. So check this out: logo designer, design educator, proud freelancer. That's my LinkedIn headline. What do you think? Pretty succinct?
I saw that.
Yeah.
Succinct.
Basically, I'm a logo designer that kind of teaches everything I know online. So I'm 39 years old. I have 2 children. I live on the Gold Coast, Australia, with my wife and young family. But I'm from the UK. I immigrated from London in 2021, right in the middle of a pandemic, and had to do 2 weeks of quarantine when I get here with my daughter, who was 2 at the time, which was awful. But I live out here with my tiny little home studio doing freelance graphic design for, brands and businesses all over the world. So I'm sort of old enough to have had a bit of experience in our industry, but young enough that I'm still up with the cool kids and I can still be on Instagram making, social media content, and just about pass for, popular. Well, not popular, but well, you determine that. But I basically, at some point in, I think it was 2022, I had my first viral moment on TikTok where I shared something online that I was pretty proud of, and I had something like 3 million views. Instantly got something like 70 leads in a single day for my logo design business, and was like, wow, like, why have I not been doing this sooner? So these days I split my time between creating content for social media and doing client work. And at some point last year, I think it was, my revenue split. The percentages tipped over from making more money as a content creator than actually from the logo design side of things. It's close, but it ever so slightly tipped into the sort of content creation side of things. So, you and I both are friends with a guy called Jamie Brindle, and he talks about how half your time should be spent on marketing your business and the other half of your time should be spent on your client work. And I totally see this social media content creation as marketing for my business. It's a way for me to generate leads. It's a way for me to get people to my website to book me for jobs. And the simple fact that it actually helps people at the same time is a massive bonus and really fulfilling. But I am using this as a lead generator for my business. I'm trying to win more clients, and this is how I do it now.
Okay. How transparent are you with your business stuff, like numbers and things like that?
I could do percentages with you. Whether we actually get into figures, well, ask me the questions and I'll tell you if it's uncomfortable or not to answer.
It's a business channel, so I ask the business questions, but it doesn't mean you have to answer anything that you don't feel comfortable with. But all right, I think it's an important moment in your business life, your professional freelancer life, that all of a sudden now this thing that started out as a curiosity, probably as it is for most people when they start creating content, like, oh, I don't know, let me try. It's not going to hurt. Just try something. And you said for the first time in your business life, the content part of it has generated more than 50% of the revenue in which you kind of take home. So first, break down for us where that revenue comes from. Is it sponsored deals? Is it Instagram and TikTok actually paying you? Where is that money coming from?
It's predominantly sponsorships and paid partnerships, yes. So the split looks like this. So I actually worked this out before this podcast. I've got my notes here. Okay. 42% of my business is paid partnerships. 40% is logo design and traditional graphic design clients. 15% is digital products, so selling things like online courses, and bits and pieces that way. And 3% is public speaking and affiliates. So going to places like Adobe Max, doing summits on around the globe online, and doing talks for those. But yeah, 42% is paid partnerships now. So that's working with people and clients around the globe, promoting their services online in a way that fits in with my content as best as possible. One of the biggest ones, obviously, is Adobe, because I am in their software all day long. It's basically the majority of my content is teaching you how to be a better graphic designer, hidden software tips and tricks. So things like how to go faster in Adobe Illustrator, and then how to be like a better freelancer, or how to be a better graphic designer. So a little bit around like design principles, or your daily workflow, that kind of thing. So the logo design thing is up obviously massively in there, and I love that because it is keeping me on the ground. It keeps me, in the trenches, doing the client work and actually tackling those daily problems that we face as graphic designers. And I take all those problems, bundle them all up, and regurgitate them online in my videos to help the next generation of designers.
And I must say, I'm not just saying this because you're on the show. I follow you. I watch your videos on Instagram, and I find them to be helpful. And you are showing me the nooks and crannies. I've been using, I don't want to say Illustrator longer than you've been alive, but I've been using it for a really long time. 32 years
you beat me there.
plus.
Yeah. You would.
Right? Well, you're 39. I mean, I'm getting close to using it longer than you're alive. Yeah. But what I wanted to say is that an old dog like myself is using Illustrator like version 1 or 2. And there's constantly new improvements, tools that they sneak in there, different ways, more efficient ways of doing something. And I enjoy the way that you present one simple lesson, a quick trick, and you do it kind of in a funny, humorous way. There's a style of which that you use that other people use, but I really enjoy it. It's like, here's something super technical, but the old way is like, oh, you're going to talk me through every step and I'm going to fall asleep during the thing. You're doing cutaways to a reaction like, frustration, some kind of emotion, and then you just do it without dialogue most of the time, and you just fix it. And it's hard to tell a story without dialogue.
Well, actually, those are the videos that kill because they're kind of language. They don't rely on language. So globally, they're more popular immediately because you're not having to explain. I do a lot of content that goes into more in-depth stuff, and I talk on camera and I get into that. But you're right, the videos that tend to go viral are the ones where it is like reaction-based problems that I'm facing in graphic design, like and like horrible reactions to that problem I'm facing, and then fixing it with a simple software trick. And usually, the simpler the better. And if you set that to sort of like an absolute banger of a track and put a bombshell Adobe Illustrator tip in there, 16 million views later, you're absolutely laughing. But the greatest thing is that yes, that the Adobe Illustrator that you started out with doesn't exist anymore. It's evolved over time, and there's this plethora of graphic designers like my age who learned maybe 15 years ago how to use the software, and updates have come along and they might have missed them. And it's hard for Adobe to kind of get those updates in front of people's faces, other than on the little wizard that comes up when you open up a new software. The simple fact is that I can discover something new, teach it to these graphic designers who've been using the software for a long time, and to them, it's mind-blowing. I do get a lot of comments from younger designers like, how did you not know that? This has been out for like 3 years. How did you not know? And it's like, well, I'm sorry, I learned a long time ago, and I've evolved. The software has evolved around me. Luckily, I did a bit of research and found out about it and shared about it. So half the people in the comments are like, how do you not know that? The other half are like, mind blown emojis and how this is incredible. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Look, you could share some tip and trick that just dropped, or one of these most archaic ones where you have to be like 75 years old to know what that trick is. And someone in the audience is like, yeah, I knew that all the time. See,
yeah,
there's always somebody, and that's totally fine. Okay. I want to get into the business part, but before I do, I want to make a request of you. If you've done this or not, I remember going to Max a couple of years ago, and it was a super nerdy session that was hosted by engineers from Adobe. It said, hey, the default typeface and the default point size and lighting, you can change that, and you can have it stick. I think you did something similar to this, yes?
I did. I actually have a course about this, like going faster in Adobe Illustrator by changing those little defaults that you have to revert around all the time. So something like when you draw a new shape in Adobe Illustrator, it automatically sets it with a 1 pixel black stroke and a white background, which you always have to switch off the stroke, change it to the color that you want. You can change that default. It's a little bit fiddly, annoyingly. So that's where I come in and help you how to do that. But things like shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, defaults and templates, workspaces, using actions and macros, that kind of stuff is what I kind of pride myself on, is going faster in the software. And I've always been a designer that is really efficient. Might not be the best designer, but I'm definitely one that works fast. And when I was in this sort of agency space as a freelancer in London, I was rolling because I could go so quickly and turn work over so fast. I was getting booked left, right, and center, purely for the fact that I could sit down in an agency, turn on Illustrator, change a couple of things, and 10 minutes later, I'm busting out client work for them in absolutely no time. So, when I went freelance, it really helped that kind of efficiency and speed in the software. So that's what I'm trying to teach now is, to get people to go faster so they can turn over more things, like more logo projects, because the simple fact is that they're going faster in Adobe Illustrator, they can get more clients through the door. So that's really sort of helping people, and it's made the content sort of really kind of popular. People love it.
Yeah, you're what I would consider a power user, one who comes in and changes all the defaults, the keyboards, the mouse, the preferences, and it takes a minute to set up on each computer. And I'll tell you the story from the other side. As one who employs freelancers, I always am kind of blown away by the people who bring in a little hard drive. They set things up. It takes them a few minutes. Sometimes they bring in their own keyboard, monitor setup, and chair even. And that's how you know, like, this person is ready to work. And whatever they do in the time in which you book them, it's going to run circles around the other people who are literally just working with one hand the whole time. I consider them like mouse jockeys. They just can move the mouse around a lot. And like, you have two hands. You're allowed to use your second hand and use keyboard shortcuts and things like that to make your workflow more efficient. But I just want to give that for our audience. Number one is, if you want to be booked consistently as a freelancer, which is something you know a lot about, come in, be prepared, be a professional, be ready to go and optimize your workflow so that most of your processing power, your mental processing power, is on creativity, thinking through the problem, looking for new ideas as opposed to fighting the software. And if you learn one keyboard shortcut multiplied over how many times you do that over the course of your professional life, you're talking about days, weeks, if not months off of your life that you get back. And I think that's really cool. Okay. Now, I know that you do a bit of work with Adobe, and so do I. So Adobe, if you're listening to this podcast, I'd just like to make a request. For non-technical people, it should just be in the preferences that we can just change everything about Illustrator's default, that we don't have to rely on guys like James to show us the weird backdoor hack on how to change all these things. Because it's a little intimidating to go in there and just like, man, why can't I change this? In most software, you can change these things.
Yeah, true. Also, but if they do that, then I'm out of a job. So Adobe, please don't do that. Keep it the way it is so I can keep my content going. Adobe Illustrator is massive, though. It has something like, I think it's like more than 20 tools on the toolbar alone. And then obviously like hundreds of subsets of menus and preferences and all the things it can do. It's a behemoth of a platform. Just alone, Adobe Illustrator, is like probably like 75% of my content, because I can just talk all day about it. It just goes on and on and on. But when you think about the entire suite of Adobe packages and all of the things inside Photoshop and Premiere Pro and all the little bits and pieces, the content is endless. You can just create content all day long about going faster or tips and tricks inside these software packages. So the simple act of just teaching this certainly brought me more followers, and that's obviously then diversified my income stream. So it's a complete win-win.
Okay. Let's do some of the business stuff. But in case you're just joining us today on my podcast, I have James Barnard. He's based out of the Gold Coast in Australia, by the way of the UK, and he and his family moved there. He describes himself as a logo designer, design educator, and a proud freelancer. Yes, I'll have to talk to you about the proud part later. But let's get back into the business part of it, okay? What is the average deal size for a sponsor? Like, you have a lot of followers on Instagram. You have 500,000 plus, and you have I think, where's my stats here? Almost 200,000. Let's see here, 250,000 followers on TikTok. So about half of your IG followers. That's a lot of followers. You're an influencer, bona fide, certified. What kind of deals can someone get as a creative person with a highly specialized niche? You drawing logos with AI, Adobe Illustrator. What can the sponsor deals look like?
So there's like bands of sponsorship deals, and typically upwards of like 500,000 followers, you can start to charge in the 5-figure range for that kind of thing. And obviously, like the content is super niche, really, really specialized. But because of that, I've actually got a really kind of dedicated following and a real community around sort of what I do. And I've worked really hard on that, making sure that the content is very specific and focused. And ideally, just used to drive leads to my business, but it helps the next generation of graphic designers like you do. And because that content is so niche and so focused, when a brand does reach out to me, they can do such targeted sponsorship posts that you can charge a little bit higher. So yeah, typically it's recently into the sort of 5-figure range, which is unbelievable and so fulfilling as well, because I'm actually being paid to create content, which I love doing. It's such a rewarding job. I love this side of the business, actually putting these videos together and digesting and dissecting this information and regurgitating it in a way that people can understand and as simply as possible. And I think I'm pretty good at that. This kind of funneling the complex into something that's meaningful and understandable. And then the partners like Adobe come along, and my content, it just sits in harmony with their offering. And when they come out with things like new software updates or packages or releases, I'm the perfect guy to go to for that. So yeah, Adobe has been my little cash cow for the last couple of years. I don't know how long that will continue for, but long may it rain. Yeah. It's brilliant. And I love being a part of, being a partner with those guys. They're a great company. I think would be a great company to work for. They've got a really culturally diverse group of people there. They're all very friendly. They're all really professional and timely, and they pay well. And I absolutely love it. So yeah, hopefully I'll do more with them in the future.
Yeah, one of my goals in life is every company I give money to, meaning services I buy or products that I pay for, I want them to eventually give me my money back. To give me the products for free and to right. Thank me for the experience. And it's a wonderful feeling that the first time you get a decent sized sponsor's check, and you're like, dang, I would have done this for free. And now I'm getting paid for it. Okay. So I'm going to ask you this question. It's a weird question. What is the most you've ever been paid for in a sponsored post? And you don't have to tell us the client or anything. I'm just curious, like what is the biggest score on that sponsored thing? Because 42% of your income, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously that's not from like one or two single posts, but do I tell you the exact figure? Something like 12,500 USD. But that increases every single time I go up to, when my following increases. So at the minute, combined with TikTok and Instagram, it's upwards of 750,000 followers. That's getting up there in the sort of the big leagues now. And I'm starting to turn away sponsors. A year ago, I would never have done that. I would have taken anything that you sent my way. I'd have done a sponsored post for 500 quid. Or a freebie, which I often still do. Give me
for hemorrhoids cream.
Yeah, well, maybe not. But something that's in line with my content. Like, it's really cheeky. Like, I really wanted a new office chair, and I couldn't get a sponsored post with a brand that just wouldn't do it. It cost them slightly too much, and it got to the point where I was like, "You could just send me one, and I'll it'll be in the background in all the videos." And even then, they wouldn't do it. So I had to buy my own office chair, which was disappointing. But we're getting to that point where I can start to kind of be a bit cheeky there and actually get a few freebies sent my way. But yeah, it's great. The more the following increases, the more I can start to charge for this, and the value sort of goes up with them as well. It's about you get to a point where you start getting worried about like views on videos rather than the content that you're actually displaying. So if a video posts and it flops, that's a bit embarrassing considering they've just paid you 5 figures for a brand deal. So there's sort of highs and lows between those partnerships.
Do you think there's a problem when you post so much content about creative workflow that the companies like Adobe are like, he's talking about AI, Adobe Illustrator all day long. Why would we pay him now? He's already doing it organically. We're getting that reach and exposure anyways. That's always one of these challenges that I hear from people. So that's why they genericize everything? Because if they give the space for free, then what would compel a company, a brand to give you money to continue to do what you do? Do you find that to be a conflict? What's your take on that?
I mean, they haven't really had an issue with the content. I guess it's mainly they can kind of control a little bit of the messaging when they want to put something out into the world. So if I was going to do it for free, that also means that I could slam it if I didn't like it and absolutely rinse on this new software that I didn't agree was good or efficient. I guess if they have a campaign that they're running and it's about sort of saturation of social media with them. You notice when Adobe launches something new, every designer that you follow on social media is suddenly posting at the same time about this product or feature, and that's kind of really impactful for them. They can control the flow of that sort of social content, and it comes in like a wave where you kind of then can't miss it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's about timing and messaging for them.
I recently met a couple of agents who manage creators, and it's kind of interesting what they do for people. And they negotiate much better deals. They get you the brands that you want to work with, and they help you to kind of control the amount of, I guess they help you to get a level of autonomy so that you're not like, oh, you want me to change that one thing, huh? Okay, I don't want to do that again. Is that something that you're looking into or consider?
I've been approached by a few people offering to do that for
Mm-hmm.
me. The trouble is they take 10%, and that's a huge cut when it comes to like, if you're dealing in the sort of hundreds of pounds or sorry, dollars range, it's a lot of money to kind of put on the table. But by being a freelancer for all these years, I've kind of learned to sell myself. I've done it I've been a freelancer for something like 8 or 9 years now. So I'm getting pretty good at selling the value of what I do. And it's exactly the same with the social media side of things. I have been able to command pretty big deals. Maybe I might have gotten more if I'd had an agent or someone representing me. But I want to learn this process. And I like the fact that I have one-on-one communication with these people. And if there's any problems, I don't kind of need to go through an intermediary for it. And I take the whole package as well. I don't have to put any, no one takes a slice for themselves.
I can almost certainly guarantee you'd get paid a lot more money if somebody else was managing it for you. I run into the same problem. I don't have an agent or a manager, but I have a team. And oftentimes I like to keep church and state separate so that I'm going to deal with the creative stuff. I want to be considered like good cop, and then bad cop. My business manager comes in and is like, I'm taking this out. We're removing this and you need to pay him this. And we're not bending on this. Because they know if they backdoor that conversation to me, back channel it, I'm like, yeah, I'll just do it, whatever. And so that's why what I'm getting paid is way far more than I would if I were negotiating myself. And I do have a reputation as being a negotiator. So it's just being able to objectively say someone else is managing that. It's really out of my hands. You got to get them to approve it. Otherwise I can't move forward. And it's nice to be able to have that, whether they work for you or they're an independent contractor, just putting that out there.
Yeah, I'm sure that would help. I am in the infancy of this whole thing, though. This is very, very new to me. It's only the last sort of couple of years, or even 18 months, really, where this has all kind of taken off for me. It's been a huge explosion. So I am going through some growing pains with it, and definitely even within my freelance business, there's ways I could improve. I'm not the best converter. I'm not very good at converting leads into sales, and I need to work on that. But the social media side of things has kind of helped that. So yeah, I probably would do better with an agent. So maybe that is something that I need to address in the next year or two.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this because I want to talk about more important things, but there's still 3 more categories. I just want to quickly go down. Maybe we could just give me the number or the number that you're not comfortable with. That's fine. So I looked up your course. It's what is it called here? It's called Turbocharge Your Logo Design, and it's $99. Pretty reasonable price. And you have a hit list of who's who. Like everybody I know on social media has given you a testimony on it. It's like, no, I follow them. I talked to them. I interviewed them. I just met them. It's everybody on there. It's pretty impressive. What is lifetime sales for your course right now?
Oh, I only launched it in December last year. It's my very first. Well, actually, it's not my first course. Yeah, it was my first sort of foray into digital products. And like I said earlier, it's something that was a chunk of change. It was 15% of my income for the year came from that one course. So it's not to be sort of sniffed at. It was really good. I think I probably could have done better with the sales. It was around about sort of 45,000. I think I took home from that course, which is, in the grand scheme of things, that's incredible. but it was a lot of work. I put my heart and soul into this course. I took 2 months off. So it started out as 6 weeks of client work, which was I planned to. I ended up being 2 to 3 months. I did everything myself. I filmed it, edited it. I set up the website, launched Kajabi, set up that whole system to sort of host the course. I did it alongside with Skillshare. So I did a kind of, sort of joint launch with them. Marketed it myself, all of my own social media, did my own email marketing, and I don't have much of an email list either. So it was a huge undertaking. I was so burnt out by the end of the process. It's great to have it there under my sort of arsenal, but it was really, really full on. So yeah, it was hectic as hell. But yeah, it was a great return on investment. It was definitely worth my time, and there's such a steep learning curve. I learned loads about doing it. So the aim of the game is to try and do more of that this year and kind of diversify that stream a little bit more, change that pie chart into a little bit more of sort of digital products versus the client work, maybe take on bigger and better clients, but fewer of them, and do more digital products and courses sort of going forward. But yeah, I'm at a huge inflection point right now with my business. This social media side of things has really taken off just over the last 18 months. And now I can start to maybe use that following to help me generate a little bit more income outside of the client work.
Yeah. It's impressive that you took on all this work by yourself. And I want to say congratulations. $45,000 is not a small amount. That's like a BMW 3 Series, I believe, with some options. So, yeah. I mean, sometimes we get numb with the numbers, where it's like, oh, it's just that. But I'm like, well, what is it that you can exchange that money for? So it's pretty cool. Plus, you're building up a library, and over time, the library generates more money for you. Maybe somebody starts off as being a fan using the tools, but then they become a client somewhere because they tell their boss tells their boss. The next thing you know, you're in through the back door. Okay. Logo. 40% of your income comes from logo design, bespoke custom work. Do you have a minimum size of engagement?
So yes and no. I have a floor price. Okay. So I made a massive mistake a few years back on my website. I put my floor price on my website because I was kind of getting so fed up with people asking me to do a logo for 50 quid. The admin alone of trying to sort of bat back those proposals and leads coming through was kind of annoying. So I put my floor price of like a few $1,000s on the my website, and I got no leads in 2 months. People came to the website, saw that floor price, didn't see the value that I was providing with my services, and just bounced off to a competitor. And I did everything to kind of sort of stem the flow of the cash flow problems that I started to face. I halved the price on the website to see if that would work. Didn't help at all. I put some paid advertising towards my website to try and drive more leads. That was an absolute disaster. I didn't know what I was doing, wasted money, until eventually I took those prices off my website and got the ball rolling again with the leads coming through to the point where I can sort of massage out those juicy leads. But yeah, I do have like a minimum sort of level that I will personally take on, and that will kind of fluctuate depending on whether I think the client is cool or not, how long a lead time we have in the project, those kind of things. So yeah, there's definitely a bit of leeway there, but I do have a bit of a rule about who's coming on board.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening to this or watching this video later on, and they're like, I love his work, I want to work with them, let's set the bar. It's like, prices start at, otherwise please don't call me wasting my time. Or do you not want to say that?
So that's my first. Do you actually want me to answer that question? Because that's the first thing I do.
I do want you to answer the question. Or you can say pass. That's
pass on that one, because it might stop people from getting in touch. So sometimes that's a bit of a barrier to people. People might feel a bit embarrassed about getting in touch, considering that I might want to work with them if the client is cool. So I'll often do jobs that I'll do really cheap, just because I really want to do the project. Things like badge designs for motorcycle clubs in Texas, designs for motor racing teams, that kind of thing. Like that kind of stuff really floats my boat. And I would probably do those jobs for like a few £100 if I had the time. So, I don't want people like that to not get in touch. And that was really interesting when I did put my prices on my website and no one got in touch via my website. I got a couple of leads through other channels like Reddit because they hadn't seen the prices. and they reached out with, can you do our motorcycle badge for our Texas Motorcycle Club? I was like, yes, please. That's a cool job. I really want to do this. I think I did it for something like 500 quid at the time. This is years back now. But, I never would have got that job had they gone to my website, and I'd have missed out on that opportunity. So I'd like to get the lead first, check out their job, check out who they are. Then I'll go back to them with an initial offering, and just to give them an idea immediately of what the sort of budget range is. But these days, when people go through my website, there's a form there that says, what is your current budget range? And there's ranges that they can select. So I at least have an idea of what they're looking to spend. So that kind of gauges that first conversation.
That could help me. What are the ranges they can choose from?
So it's $0 to $1,000, $1,000 to $5,000, $5 to $10, and $10,000 plus. And obviously, everybody selects 0 to 1 because they're chancing.
Are you serious?
Yeah, something like
really
that.
Do?
It's a huge amount.
Okay.
I guess by the nature of me being a freelancer and not being an agency, and the types of clients I work with small, SMEs, the middle of the road people, and I like that. I like being able to help people that might want to invest just a little bit more in their in sort of trying to help their business in the sort of early stage. So I get a lot of startups come to me, especially like tech startups from places like California. They'll come with a little bit more money to spend to kind of take this process seriously. I have the occasional like whale will come through $10,000 plus, which is fantastic. And they're mainly coming to me these days because of the sort of clout of social media. I run a lot of case studies on my social platform, and that's kind of a freebie. Yeah, I used to call it TikClicks. I'm going to stop calling it that. It's TikTok client logo case studies. So anytime, I finish a project, I'll go through how I worked with this client, showing the rounds of revisions that we did and how we got to the final product. And that's really cool because it helps designers and shows them the process of logo design and how we got to that final product. But it also showcases to a client, this is how it might work for you, and how it's what it's like to work with me as an actual service provider. So yeah, having those case studies is really, really sort of powerful, and really, really helps the sales as well.
Quick question. Do you ride a motorcycle?
Nope, I don't.
Would you like to work with motorcycle brands?
Yeah, I would. I think it's something to do with like the style of the industry. I love
aesthetic.
It. Yeah.
I know what you mean.
I follow a guy. Well, I'm friends with a guy called Alan Peters now. As a wonderful logo designer. He's the king of the badge. I want to be him. I love badge design and using logos as sort of like the central emblem to build on a larger badge. And patches and badge design is a great sort of hobby of mine. I love it.
I think there's, if memory serves me correct, there is a French designer who does a lot of raceway motorcycle logo stuff, hand painted work. It's beautiful. I think it goes by the BMD design. Are you familiar with this person? I'll look it up later. Okay. He does excellent work. It's like if I had something that had that kind of aesthetic, I would just hire him to draw and paint. He can paint, and we'll talk about your inability to draw and sketch yourself, but we'll get there. Okay. So I think we covered it. I'm happy with that. There's a philosophical difference between you and I and the proud freelancer. And I'm like, ugh. What is the difference between a freelancer and an agency? And why is it that an agency can do this and a freelancer can't? And I didn't bring you on the show to debate with you, but I'm just curious. You're like, as an agency owner previously, currently retired, I want to put up barriers so that people don't call me and waste my time. And I want to make it feel like you just can't afford this. If you're worried about money, don't call me. And here's the fundamental belief I have, and I'd love for you to opine on this, is if someone wants to work with you, money will not be a problem. They will find a way. And I'm talking about like 20 plus years working in the advertising space. We've never lost a deal because of money. We lost a deal because it wasn't the right creative for us. We didn't come up with the right creative. It was uninspired, whatever it was, or there was a personality conflict. It's almost always one of those things that's not because they couldn't afford it. Because if two parties want to work together, they will find a number. My theory is this, that motorcycle brand hears this podcast and looks at your work. It's like, man, we really want to work with them. I don't know. Would he take $2,500 for $4,000? They would call you and you'd float a number and you would work it out. And then maybe they were like, you know what? We can give you like 14 leather jackets and we'll give you the 2,500. Would you consider? And you're like, yeah, I'll do it for that. Come on. That's my theory. I want to make it difficult for people to to come and buy from us, because I only want to talk to a handful of people. I don't want to talk to 50 people and find out it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
Your take on this, please.
Well, I'm in the infancy of this success as a freelancer, I think. And I think that's one of the key things to note here, is that this is an early stage for me. Yes, I'm 39 years old, and yes, I've been designing for more than 15 years. In terms of actually selling my wares, it was you who put me on to, how to charge more. And I started following you years ago. And as a freelancer, I started taking things more seriously and charging differently, packaging up my offering. The main problem with me is that I'm such a control freak. I've controlled the process for so long that I like being part of almost everything in the business. And it's something that I've really had to deal with as a freelancer, is actually relinquishing some control. And I recently hired a couple of people, and it's the first time I did it was last year. I hired an assistant to help me do things like roll out logo exports for clients, help me with presentations, and do brand guidelines documents. I have a copywriter now who helps me do my newsletter and is starting to help me out with the copy on some of the presentations and the brand guidelines documents. That's the plan anyway. So yes, I would love to be at that point where I'm acting like an agency and putting up barriers and walls so that clients can't speak to me. And eventually, maybe I'll even get an assistant to do all my inbound leads, which I'm currently totally controlling and checking out. But at the minute, it's just I'm right there. I'm at this inflection point where the success has just happened almost overnight for me. In the space of the last couple of years, my business, my 23-24 financial year closed 217% higher than the year before I started teaching on social media. It's exploded overnight. So there's been a lot of learning curves with it, and a lot that I've had to deal with personally to kind of come to terms with this fact and how to kind of eke more cash out of this situation that I've got myself into now. But it's ludicrous. Like it's happened so fast that I'm just sort of, I've got a few growing pains to deal with.
Yeah. You're already technically no longer a freelancer, because you're allowed to, well, I don't think you were ever a freelancer, to be honest, because you run your own independent studio, you work on your own time, your own machines, and theoretically, you're not even billing hourly. So you're an independent business owner. It just so happens that previously you were a company of one, but now you have a writer, you have an assistant. So it's like a junior designer, somebody helping you already. So it's not even just you anymore. A freelancer technically sells their time. I don't think you're selling your time. So as you continue to grow, you're no longer, you're a studio or something. Just a small studio, but
maybe that's a personal branding thing that I need to address, because I evolved into this from an actual freelance role. I was a gun for hire when I left publishing in the UK, something like 8 or 9 years ago. I went into the freelance space, and I went into agencies all over London and sat down at a desk and was, a hire by hour professional. And then COVID hit, and we all started working from home, less of the agency work, more of the sort of client direct work. And that's evolved into this logo design space. And at some point, after, watching all of your videos during the early stage of COVID, I dumped all of this sort of generic graphic design work from my portfolio, started focusing only on logo and visual identity. And that has morphed into this new business that I have now. And I guess, I've just kind of always called myself a freelancer, because I feel like a freelancer because I'm doing my own thing. It's just me in this business. Well, it's not anymore, but realistically, I'm in this office that you see before you all day long by myself. And the kind of the pains that you have as a freelancer, and the peaks and troughs of business and all that kind of things that go along with running your own offering. That's just the way it's kind of felt. So maybe I need to do an overhaul of my personal brand and brand myself as an agency and change the name of the company, and who knows.
No. It could still be exactly the same. You just have to present yourself a little bit differently. Yeah. You and I have a lot in common, actually. I'm in my own studio. I'm here all by myself, me, myself, and I. But I don't consider myself a freelancer. I have not considered that since like the first year of being out of school. Now, I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm going to make a bold prediction, James. By the end of 2024, you will no longer be displaying proud freelancer. You might call it something else.
By the end of this podcast, I'm going to be no longer displaying proud freelancer, deleting it from my LinkedIn right now.
It might be like reformed freelancer turned agency studio owner, business extraordinaire, something like that. And I want to just reinforce this thing, because there's a lot of people in our community, our audience, our collective audience, yours and mine, who are going to be thinking to themselves like, gosh, does this specialization thing actually work? And I believe you just said that. So I just want to reinforce it to everybody. You used to do lots of things. You're like, one day you're like, I don't want to do that. I just want to be the logo guy. I want to be really fast. I want to be really good. And I can do amazing things without even knowing how to sketch. Is that the case? Have you benefited by specializing?
Unbelievably so. Yeah, it's quite insane how much my life changed when I stopped becoming this generic graphic designer in a world saturated with, graphic design jack of all trades people. Like I have a vast experience in graphic design. I've been a graphic designer for 15 years, worked in publishing. I've done everything from digital layout, websites, to print, to a little bit of animation, flash adverts back in the day, email newsletters. Like I can do it all. But by focusing on the logo design side of things, it meant that immediately, just from like an SEO perspective, it was easier to attract clients that way. When people typed in, that was one of the things that immediately changed things for me, is that I changed my website, removed all the generic graphic design work off my website, focused it on visual identity and logos, and then wrote a couple of landing pages just targeting the keywords freelance logo designer London. And within the space of something like 2 months, I was number one. So if you search that term, I think I still am now. I think if you search that, I come up as like at least up the top.
I'm going to do it right now.
Go ahead. It might be because, I was based in London when I was doing those searches, but I think I tried it in Australia the other day and I was still pretty close to the top. So that was crazy.
You're at number one. Look at that. Number one, right after sponsored.
And I basically did a few changes to the website, updated the headline on my site, and got a few leads coming through that way. It's something like 7 to 8 leads a week, which was not to be sniffed at. That was decent for the offering at the time.
That's a lot. Yeah. People would kill for that kind of action.
It's
yeah,
unbelievable. And that was just from a few small changes to the way I was selling myself and the way I was displaying myself online. The social media side of things, when that came along, the number of leads now through social media is something like 85% through social media. And considering that I teach graphic design to an audience of graphic designers, the number of clients that I'm getting through from social media or as like my content marketing is beyond ridiculous. And I need to work on converting them because I get a lot of leads through, and there's still, some work to do there to kind of eke a bit more out of that in terms of percentages of closing those deals. But it's wonderful. I've been booked out something like 3 months solid ever since that first viral TikTok video because of the nature of those, the volume of those leads that are now coming through from the business.
Which video was that? I'm going to reference it.
Was luck. It was pure luck. Okay. I got 3 logos accepted into this book called The Logo Lounge, and I bragged about it on TikTok via a stitch. It was really lucky the way it worked out. The stitch was something like, how did it go? It was, give me an example of a niche flex that means nothing to the whole world, but to you it's a big deal. And I just showed that my logo's got into this book, and it's a prestigious book. And I think you were a former judge on this book, actually. The Logo Lounge is Bill Gardner's, and one of my logos is on the cover of this book now. So I was bragging about this book, getting into the book, and then people were like, well, show us the logos then. I was like, okay. So then another video came off the back of that. And then people started asking me questions in the comments. And initially the content was basically me just responding to the questions, like, how do you do this? How do you use the shape builder tool in Adobe Illustrator? And then noticed immediately that people were kind of loving this explainer-based, value-based content. So like for the longest time, my social media was just me showing off my portfolio, like, here's a new logo project I did, here's this, here's that. And when I started providing value and teaching on the platform, my follower account just exploded to the point where about 6 months later, one of my videos about the pencil tool in Adobe Illustrator, the most niche thing you could possibly imagine, hit 15 million views on Instagram. And my Instagram account went from like 8,000 followers to 120,000 followers in 2 weeks. Because there was like a plethora of other sort of design education-based content behind it. And since then, it's just not stopped. I've just kind of kept this hype train going.
That's awesome, man. And that goes to dispel another idea that people keep thinking, if I create tutorials or content to help other people like myself, well, clients don't want that. And you just proven that theory completely wrong. Because as far as I know, you've not created anything that's like, hey, come hire me. This is what I do, and talk about your wares.
Right.
And the significant change that you have, which I've observed myself too. And I don't think we're breaking new ground here. This is not like Anderson Cooper breaking news or Wolf Blitzer on CNN. you're basically saying the minute I stop talking about me, my portfolio, my work, and I made it about them, you,
Right.
because no one wants to read a headline. They want to read the things that they're interested in. As soon as you do that, everything changes.
Right.
And I think this is a perfect segue for us to talk about your public speaking and the things that you're going to be doing more of. I saw you at Adobe Max recently. That was pretty awesome. Sat in the audience while you're working through your talk.
Yeah, thanks for that.
You know,
That was nerve-wracking.
mm-hmm. I was there to support you, man.
Just to let everybody know, you know, Christo, you're a hero of mine. I've followed you for years. This was my first big foray into the public speaking world. And in my rehearsal, Chris walks in and sits in the front row and stares at me during my 15-minute talk when there was nobody else in the room. So I was absolutely bricking it. So that was a kind of baptism of fire into my world of, public speaking. But you gave me some pointers there, and it totally helped for the actual thing. And then the next day I got to stand front of the line to go into your talk and learn even more. So that was brilliant. But yeah, the public speaking thing is new for me. Yeah, go ahead.
I love seeing creatives take their art and craft, find a way to make it meaningful to an audience, and watching that journey, it's a beautiful thing to witness. And I can say years later, man, I was there when that guy was just reading his notes and it was like a little stiff and he got through it. And now look at him, global superstar you. Okay, well, you have some new ideas you're going to drop on us. What is the new thing that you're interested in talking about?
Well, this whole platform of teaching my sort of what I know on social media has led me to a bit of a discovery in that the more I teach, the more I'm actually retaining this information. So, the very nature of my content is explaining what I know on social media. And it got to a point where I was actively starting to look for new ideas and to learn new things because I'd basically covered most of the topics that I knew about just being as a graphic designer for a number of years. So things like optical illusions within graphic design, how to deal with sort of overshoots, that the typical things like why we don't use red, green and blue print ink in printers. Answering those kind of questions and actually going out there and actively learning led me to the realization that while I'm teaching this on my own platforms, I'm actually remembering this information. And I was on an Adobe live stream a few months back where I got asked a question live on the stream, like, what's the difference between like mathematically aligned and optically aligned? And I just went off on this like absolute tangent about optical illusions. And I was like reeling off, there's the overshoot, there's the Poggendorf illusion, there's the irradiation illusion. And the next comment along was like, how do you know all this? And I was like, because I've taught it. And this realization of this sort of see one, do one, teach one approach, which was sort of synonymous with the medical industry, has been mind-blowing for me. So I think it was like during COVID, I was like watching reruns of ER, and Dr. Green is showing Dr. Carter how to do this lumbar procedure. And he says, see one, do one, teach one. And it was this kind of like, what? Like, what do you mean see one, do one, teach one? This is crazy. Like, this is an actual medical practice that was sort of founded in the late 1800s. I've looked this up since. I think it was a guy called William Halstead, who was like one of the founders of Johns Hopkins University. This is a practice that they put into approach, was that he would show someone how to do a procedure. They would do it immediately afterwards. And then straight after that, teach it to a junior resident. And the simple act of passing that information on, something about it hardwires that information into your brain. So there was this study about something called the protege effect. And it was like, I think it was like in 2009, a group of people were given some material to learn. So a group of students were given the same material to learn with the intention of being sort of tested on it later on. They split the group in half. Half of the group was told, at the end of this session, you're going to be tested on this material. The other half of the group was told, you are going to teach this material to another member of this study. So you're going to have to present this information in a way that they can understand. But in reality, at the end of the test, they tested everybody the same. They just gave everybody a test. And they found out that the people that had been told that they were going to have to pass this information on and teach them retained the information better in a more engaging way to them and did better on the tests. So the simple act of actually knowing that you're going to have to pass this information on hardwires it into your brain. And there's something called, let me try and remember this, it's called enhanced encoding. So by reorganizing information in a way that we envisage we're going to have to explain it to somebody else, our brains make connections between what we already know and the new information, which helps us remember it better. It's wild. Like, so I found like I'm actually, with clients now, I can, I'm find that I'm more articulate with clients. I'm better on camera with them when I'm having to rationalize my designs and defend them. I can use fancy terms and technical terms that I've remembered because I've taught it to my audience, and it's so powerful. It makes me more confident when I'm speaking to them. But also another benefit is that I by teaching this information, I'm blowing up my own social media, and I'm creating value for another audience, which builds community and then fosters the spread of information within the design industry. So I just wanted to share that. I thought it was awesome.
I like that. And many years ago, before I went on this public teaching journey that I'm on today, my friend and mentor at that time, Jose Caballé, said, Chris, you know what the best way to learn something is? I'm like, no. He's like, to teach it. And I was like, are you being a prick right now? Like, you're saying I don't know how to do something, so the best way I can learn how to do something I don't know how to do is go teach someone. And there was some brilliance in what he said there, because when we know we have to teach somebody, it's like, okay, what do I got to do? I got to do some research. I got to read up. I got to figure this thing out, and I got to remember it in a way that I can explain it to someone simply, non-technical way, so that they can retain it. So the better expression that I've come to discover later on is one teaches to learn. So it's a play on words. So one teaches to learn something, but there's one teacher, but there's two students, which is kind of interesting. It's not just the person in front of you. You're learning by explaining it to them. And I found the same thing. The biggest confidence booster I've ever had in my life was my journey into education back in the early 2000s. So when you have to explain something to a room full of people, they're going to ask you questions that you didn't think you even knew the answer to. In that moment, it's like trial by fire. You either have the answer or you don't. If you don't, you just say, I don't know. Good question. It's going to require a little bit more thinking from me or a little research. I'll get back to you. And if you know it, something really cool happens. You discover something about what you knew, which most people don't ever have that inner dialogue where they're like, what do you know? So it's not until someone extracts it from you that you're like, oh, I knew this. That's kind of cool.
It's a confidence builder, isn't it, as well? Like when you suddenly find that you can answer a
It
question.
can be.
Yeah, that feels
Yeah.
great. Another great thing is as well is that by having to disseminate that information and then kind of regurgitate it in a simple way, it lends itself to creating content on social media so well, because you're actively having to digest this and explain it in under a minute, or at least you used to on TikTok. Having to explain something that's maybe quite complex, like Gestalt principles in graphic design. I did that in like a minute and a half. And that's like a vast array of things that could, Gestalt covers. It's huge. I managed to kind of cover that in about, a minute and a half video, which was really challenging. But at the same time, while doing that, I was having to sort of simplify everything down, and it helped me sort of retain that information so much better.
I think I've counted now. You've said regurgitate 3 times. So there'll be a drinking game. So each time you guys hear James mention the word regurgitate, go and take a shot. I don't prefer that word because it sounds horrible. It's vomiting out what it is that you've taken in.
Yes. Well, yeah, I think I need to work on the way I deliver this. This is a potential future public speaking talk, but there's no denying it that the actual act of teaching is helping me sort of retain that information a little bit better. But the personal benefits alone to it are just unbelievable. And I'm having more fun in my work by doing this, by actively learning and spreading this wealth. It's so fulfilling. Teaching is fulfilling as hell. I've sort of, like I said before, I'm delving into the sort of digital product space now, and this is slowly starting to become my job, and it's really rewarding. But now that I am sort of teaching a little bit more, I started to worry that I'm a glorified high school teacher with absolutely no qualifications to do this. Okay, so at some point last year, I did I took the Adobe Certified exam and became Adobe Certified in Adobe Illustrator. And that was not an easy exam, right? It's quite involved, but I passed it with almost a perfect score. And one of the questions on the exam was something that I just recently taught on my social media about subtractive and additive color models. Like, why don't we use red, green, and blue ink in printers? I've made a video about that maybe a month prior, and it was one of the questions on the exam. So I thought that was just a lovely little, to you, but I'm not embarrassed to say that I can't always recall those facts. But the act of me having recently taught it was just I thought it was a lovely little, callback to this sort of teaching thing that I've got going on now.
No, I'm just being a D-bag in case people are like, what the hell is he doing? Trying to rain on James. I'm just messing around, just joking around with James. Most people don't know what that is. And luckily you prepared, unwittingly prepared for a question that came up. I know people are certified Adobe instructors. They tell me like they have to read, they have to prepare, because every year you have to take the test again because new things change.
Every
and
2 years you have to redo it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's some like archaic things that they'll ask you. It's like, do you know this thing? And how do you're like, oh my gosh. So they really make sure they don't just hand that out to any Tom, Dick, or Harry. Okay. So, okay, you're preaching to the choir here, saying you need to be a teacher. I'm like, duh. But that's you and me, because we're both teachers doing things and we're making a living doing that. If someone's listening to this or watching this, all right, you guys, are you saying everyone should be a teacher? And is everyone gifted at it? The answer is no and no, because clearly, if everyone was gifted, you and I would have 5 followers, clearly. So the question for you is, I'm hearing this as the audience member. I want to be a better teacher. I want to speak at Max. I want to speak on the big stages. I want to have 500,000 followers. I want to make thousands of dollars with my sponsored content and get 7 leads a week. I want all that. Give me. What can I do? Top 3 tips on how I can become a better teacher.
Okay, well, it depends where you work. So, I mean, I guess these days we're all working from home. So the simple solution is social media and your own content marketing. So getting on camera was one of the things that absolutely helped me in the early stage. And that's harder for some people. I certainly struggled with that when I first started out on social media. So one of the top tips I would give out is to write a script for your content on social media. You can just read off a script to a camera and then cut those sections together, and it looks like a lovely articulate piece of prose, when in reality you're stuttering and stammering through you're doing loads of takes in front of the camera, doing claps and like cutting the footage together. Just write a script so that you can succinctly say what you want to say, read it back and cut those clips together. That's what I do. You'll hear from this podcast. I'd say and R all the time. I say words like regurgitate when I don't mean to, and it means that I actually can edit that and make it look like I'm kind of what's the word, more sort of succinct than I actually am in real life. So yeah, writing a script was huge. And don't be afraid to just share what you think might be basic to an audience, because if it's new to you, it will be new to other people. I find this all the time. People come out and I might get my facts wrong, or I might say something that they think is a little bit basic. What happens is the audience kind of corrects you. So the community that you build, let's say I put a tip out. I did this recently. I did an Adobe Illustrator tip about how to combat the irradiation illusion when white designs on a black background can often look really bloated. And to do it, you have to shave a little bit off the design to kind of thin it out slightly to stop it looking fat. And you can do this in a number of ways. The way I showed was to use the shape builder tool to kind of cut the edge away after adding a stroke. And someone went, just use offset path. And then the comments started coming in like, use offset path. Why are you not using offset path? I'm like, what is offset path? I've never heard of this. And I learned from my own audience, and they taught me something. Yeah. So I was just really transparent about the fact that I didn't notice. I made a follow-up video saying, guys, I was wrong. Look at this. The audience showed me how to do it. And that transparency went so far with the audience. They loved the fact that I was owning up to the fact that I didn't know it, having 15 years in the industry. And I just credited the people that gave me that information. I was like, look, these guys have told me, and I put in the video like screenshots of the comments, and look, everybody knew this. And it just made for such a lovely little kind of turnaround on things. And that really helps build the community. So yeah, don't be worried about if you're embarrassed about getting facts wrong or something is a little bit basic, or just putting stuff out there that you think people might kind of crap all over. You'll find out pretty quickly what's popular and what's not, and just don't be afraid to sort of share that first time.
You're saying that you can get over your fear of not knowing what to say and stammering your way through, using a lot of filler words and rambling on and not being coherent, if you just sit down and write an outline, then create a script from it, and then use that as your training wheels. That makes a lot of sense. There's a danger to that, but maybe I can get into that. The danger is in real life when you're on stage and doing a fireside or a podcast, you're a horrible communicator. So I think it's good to do that at the beginning, but you need to wean yourself off the scripts and be able to speak off the cuff and so start to master public speaking. And I think that's a skill worthwhile in terms of getting good at. Number 2, I said it a little bit differently, or I wrote it down differently than the way you said it, which is basic is best. I had a conversation with one of my staff, and her name's Carrie, and Carrie's like, Chris, is it important for me to tell a story about like where I was and how I learned at the beginning? I said, you'll be surprised, Carrie, when you tell those stories, we're going to get a ton of people who are really interested, because there are more people out there that are in that place than there are with people who are like trying to like figure out their life and business where I'm at. There's way more of you than there are of me. Please do that. Basic is best. Don't be afraid of those fundamental things that you've learned that you've taken for granted, because people will eat that stuff up. It's oftentimes those are the videos that pop off on an internet and go viral. Number 3 is learning, teaching is collaborative. Don't be afraid of that. You'll learn from them. They learn from you. It's a good exchange. If you're not a total jerk about it, because if you're like, no, I always know the right way, then that's going to come back and it's not going to age well, right? That's like instant karma for you. So those are the 3 things I got. Was there something I missed?
No, I think you summed it up pretty perfectly. I mean, obviously, we're doing this as like to further our social media and the act of teaching online. Totally helps, but there's other ways you can do it. You don't have to just be using it for your own content marketing. I mean, I used to work in a company where knowledge sharing was really, really important. So every Monday morning, we would meet for half an hour, a team of 6 designers to share something cool that we found that week. And the simple act of having to sort of come up with something that we'd learned or something that they might not know and having to present it in a sort of 5-minute slot, that was really powerful. It furthered the team as a whole because we all learned from each other and we got ideas from it. But at the same time, your public speaking gets a little bit better. You actually break out of your comfort zone and start speaking to people in a sort of semi-public forum and get used to having those conversations around design, which totally will help with dealing with clients in the future. So yeah, you can start doing things like that now within your teams if you're working within a team of graphic designers. But yeah, if you're on your own, it is going to be your social media, and which will then inform your content marketing, and you can write articles about the same thing, which then leads to greater SEO, and there's all sorts of benefits. It's crazy.
One thing that you've mentioned but not talked about specifically with this question is, I think the thing that makes someone go from being average or okay to being good to great is they're willing to do the work, to research, to read, to learn themselves. So every time there's a question, they're not just winging it. They're not just giving you their uninformed opinion about stuff. You'll go and research the Gestalt principles, or like why circles need to be a little bit bigger than squares, or triangles have to go beyond the cap height line or something like that. Because the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, they've already figured this out a long time ago, where if it's perfect, it doesn't work. It looks off. And so they correct for like how we perceive things. So do your research, everybody. Be prepared to speak about the things that you want to speak about. And the good news is, if you don't know something, don't just wing it. Just say, you know what? I don't know. Darn it. That's a really good question. If somebody here knows the answer, please tell me, and be wiser for it. And that way you all grow together.
Definitely. Transparency is so crucial on social media and being genuine, because you can't sort of maintain, a online persona that kind of isn't you. And so if you don't know something, be truthful and just own up to the fact. And I do this all the time. I found a new tool in Illustrator the other day that's been out for 10 years, didn't know about it. I use it every day, that software, and it was quite embarrassing. I just owned up to the fact. And yes, there are a lot of people in the comments that said, how could you not know that? It's right there. But then half the comments were like, I didn't know this either. That's mind-blowing. So you will help people, no matter what you kind of put out there. Just, don't be afraid to correct if you get it wrong, which does happen.
Yeah. You're doing this spirit of teaching and helping other people. It's done as an act of generosity. So if people want to get all bent out of shape, that's really their issue, not yours. And so as long as you don't take it too seriously, you'll be fine. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of that potential talk as you're kind of just beta testing those ideas. I think it's a wonderful idea to share with people, especially because it's good for your content. It's good for SEO. It's good for generating leads. It's good for yourself, your own personal development. There isn't really a bad way to do it, except for the people who just wing it. And there's lots of people out there who do that. And those are the ones that make me bristle a little bit, like, ugh, what are you doing? Learn a thing or two before you go out there and try to pretend like you're an expert. Or just say, I'm just learning this. I don't know what I'm doing. If you enjoy like wacky commentary with it's probably the dumbest way to do things, welcome aboard. And then you're forgiven for everything because you just disclose, hey, this is why I'm doing it.
Right. You're self-deprecating and being transparent right up front, and they can't kind of shoot you down for that, can they?
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about, James?
I'm good. I'm ready to start my day. It's 10 a.m. here. I'm going to crack on with some client work. Sorry, did you say that?
Wonderful. Okay. I really enjoyed our conversation, James. Thanks for coming on the show. And for people who are interested in more about what you do, maybe they want to take a course or look into potentially working with you from a client side, where should they go?
So my website is barnard.co. So you can find my portfolio there, inverted commas, portfolio, with links to all the places that I hang out on. So I'm on Instagram at barnardco, TikTok at barnardco. So yeah, you'll be able to find me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chris.